Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. And on today's episode, Lerone Murphy stays undefeated. Congrats to the Brit. Some big fights got booked. Which one caught your attention the most? We'll tackle that. And the UFC is back in Miami this Saturday for UFC 314. It's a deep card. I love it. We're going to unpack it. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con, and look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. Goes from MMA Junkie Radio. Catch us Monday and Thursdays here on the website or where you catch your podcasts. Danny Segura from down in Miami. He's the host of Hablemos MMA. For those of you that speak Spanish, he does the show in Spanish. Share that with your friends. Help them grow. And Dan Tom, also here in Sin City. Man, I just signed up to his Substack. You should check it out. Fluid Thoughts. He made me some money this week. He is our fight analyst. And Cold Coffee, he's going to be on the ones and twos. He also has a show on the side. It's called the MMA Road Show with our former colleague, John Morgan. Check it out. Those guys are funny. All right, folks, let's get into it, man. Lerone Murphy. I don't know if I want to say he defeated Josh Emmett, which he did, or just avoided the hard-hitting Josh Emmett. That almost seems like a second victory in its own because that guy comes hunting, man. So props to Lerone Murphy. He got the job done. I thought it was 2-2 going into round 5, but who cares what I have to say? I'm just a big fat Muppet here. These are the stars. Let's get a reaction. Let's go to Dan Tom. Lead things off.
Yes, it was tough. Lerone Murphy, or as he says, Lerone Murphy, which I only hear in my head that northern, or that I don't know. It's not like maybe it's not northern, maybe it's not Birmingham where Leon Edwards is from, but he's kind of got that neutralizing style, so to speak, like a Leon Edwards. Good lateral movement, can fight off the back foot, can counter. Really talented guy. I don't think anybody's denying that. But he tends to fight close, tends to fight to decision. And, with the stylistic approach that he chose, it was definitely the smart move, but was it really going to get him many fans? I think it arguably got him more criticism than fans in a win.
Yeah, not only that, Dan, you know how we always talk about you can kind of climb over people, right? If you're taking on someone ahead of you, especially if you're undefeated, you can take these big leaps and bounds. But Dan, do you feel like Lerone just maybe blew it in that respect by not at least taking more risks? He seemed to kind of, I don't know, like play chess, a little too much chess, I guess, and not enough checkers.
It's tough. He's coming off a fight with Dan Ige, who's never been finished. Josh Emmett is very durable and very dangerous. Even we saw him almost get 10-7 by Tapuri after losing 4 rounds straight, and then he comes back in the fifth round as just swinging Hail Marys. So it's really easy, honestly, to make an excuse for Murphy. It really was a smart performance. I don't want to get away from that, but yeah, I really feel like he did leave some money on the table, like what you said, George, because even in a defeat, you can kind of go out there and win some people over. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you don't even need to win the crowd over. So when you fail to do it in a victory, it's hard not to say that he didn't leave any, money on the table as far as his next move, maybe getting a better matchup and other things that you kind of alluded to, George, that can come with that.
Yeah, man, especially those last few seconds, it was just a little bit of running. And I don't expect everyone to honor the whole point to the middle, let's go type thing. But I still think there's just ways where you can show the audience, hey, look, I'm here to fight, not just avoid. Danny, am I being too harsh? What were your thoughts on the main event?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, I guess the name of the game is winning, and he's getting the job done in that regard. But we also know that in terms of getting shots, advancing your career, this and that, you got to play the entertainer part a little bit. And Lerone Murphy's not really doing himself any favors. But I kind of don't want to criticize. I think your criticism's fair, but I do kind of want to be a little bit more reserved with that because of the type of opposition that he's getting. Like, whoever's fighting Josh Emmett, especially after watching what he did to Bryce Mitchell, like I don't blame anybody for having a conservative approach, for wanting to stick and move and kind of avoid any firefights and stay on the outside and really just look to score points. It's Josh Emmett. Like, you make one little mistake and next thing you know, your face down on the canvas and you're knocked out cold. So not the greatest performance, but he did get the win. And I would assume, even though it was not the most exciting performance. I do believe he's probably going to get a step up. He did get a main event here. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, not the best performance.
All right, and goes, let's get your thoughts on the main event. Let's see again if I'm being harsh or not, or am I being fair? What'd you think?
I think you're being a little bit of both. Look, I love Josh Emmett's fights. I love that he came in and he was swinging big. I thought maybe he could have done a little bit more as well. I respect Murphy's game plan, the fact that he stuck with it. A lot of fighters don't do that. And what happens on Monday when we're here? They don't do that. We sit there and we go, what were they thinking? Why didn't they do this? Right. So it's his career, Murphy's, and I get that. He has to do what he has to do to get the win, advance in the company. But how much you advance, that can be on you sometimes, right? You can take big jumps, you can take small steps. A performance like that is probably going to give you the longer road. You got to take smaller steps. The UFC is very vocal about the type of performances that they like. The fans are very vocal about the type of performances that they like. So you got to play that game. But I do want to kind of give him props for sticking to his game plan and just, at the end of the day, dude, this Emmett kid, he can hit so hard that I get it. I kind of get why he did that type of fight. But again, if you want to advance in your career, at least maybe give us some moments. When you hear that 10-second clapper, engage, do a couple things. I just feel like there's a better balance to what Murphy could have done. But I respect the fact that he stuck with it. And at the end of the day, he may have not sent a message to the UFC or the fans, but he did to the division.
Yeah, I guess you're going up against March Madness. Not as many people are paying attention, and I think what it is he brings over this equity. This is his 5th decision in a row, and I feel like when you're undefeated, you're in a sports car, man. Show that thing off a little bit. You got to find opportunities within the fight, but more than anything, in these 5-round fights, especially at the apex, you reach a point when there's like a minute left, especially if it's 2-2. The crowd that's there gets into it, and almost like that last minute can be pretty special. You know what I mean? And it seemed to me he was just more like cruising, avoiding. I don't know. These decisionators, man. I'll just shut up. All right, guys. What did Murphy gain with this win? Is he a contender now? What do we call him? He's 16-0-1. What's next for him? You got a name? Back to Dan Tom, or is he just middle of the pack?
No, I think he's a name. He's up there. I don't think he made himself, a case to be like next, so to speak. But I still would like to see him, get another showcase spot. I know he didn't, leave the fans wanting more, so to speak. But I think you got to maybe, I don't have names in front of me, but you got to find somebody who's, is going to bring out the best in him, so to speak, to bring out that action fight, even if it maybe doesn't make as much sense ranking wise. Which, let's be honest, the UFC. They don't necessarily stick too hard and fast to that approach, nor do we necessarily match.
Okay, I think Dan might have froze there. I looked up some names here, and I mean Ortega, I guess, does sound kind of good. Man, I don't know. And here's the other thing,
out, George.
Excuse me.
Yeah, everyone wants a piece of
Ortega, right?
And yeah, and then the other thing is, who really wants to fight him too? That's the other thing, is you start to almost build like an identity where your fights are boring, and who wants to fight you? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I'm so pumped about Diego Lopes, and I just can't wait to fast forward about 40 minutes from now and talk about that featherweight. But and I feel for Emmett. I really like Emmett, man. That walkout was epic, dude. He had his hoodie and the beard. I mean, he looked like a gangster walking out. I wish it would have been him that came out on top, because he kind of carries a little bit of that momentum. Yeah. Danny, did he gain anything? Did Murphy gain anything from all this, or do we just see him like in the number 2 spot of a pay-per-view somewhere in Australia?
I think that's being generous if he's able to find himself on number 2 spot on a pay-per-view. Look, I think he's probably going to find himself like somewhere in the prelims, or if not the opening of, well, definitely not the opening. Actually, I'll take that back. Like prelim main event of a pay-per-view, and I mean that with all the respect in the world, but like we know how the UFC operates. That's not saying that what I want to see, I'm just saying how the UFC operates. And depending if an Apex card needs a fight night, or if a UFC London needs, some strengthening to do in the main card, then I can see him getting a spot there. But yeah, man, great shot, by the way, GG, on mentioning Diego Lopes, because I think the best example you can give right now of how the UFC operates is look at Diego Lopes and look at the guy he lost to in his UFC debut, Evloev. Look how different their careers have gone, and Lopes lost to him, and neither fighter has lost since. And I think Murphy is in Lerone Murphy's in a similar spot where it's like, yeah, you're good, man. There's no denying that. But how can we sell with you? Like, that's the question. So can we trust you in a year or two down the line for you to headline a UFC pay-per-view for the belt? Like, I don't know. So I like the Ortega fight, kind of, and I also suggest or just point out something that somebody said in the chat. I forget who it was. I think it was Don Vito. Said Murphy versus Allen. I don't know what the relationship is, but like, I can see that being a main event for like a London or European card. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Look, I know people are gonna go, damn, homeboy in the light blues is being really, really harsh. But I watched Manchester City and Manchester United suck up 2 hours of my time.
You
And
got
guess
one
what?
point, though.
That's
You
one
got
of my
one point,
favorite
brother.
sports and teams to follow, and they sucked yesterday. All right, Duke sucked the other day, losing a 7-point lead with less than a minute left. You gotta call it like it is, man. And I'm playing the volume game between Murphy and Emmett and all this, and oh god, it was so frustrating, especially a fellow Manchester United. I don't know if he's a United guy or a City guy, but the guys from the UK. The other day, I was having a conversation with someone, and people from the UK can talk a good game. They can sell you a good game. And when you're 16 and you got a 0 in the L column, man, we're all ears. But show us you got something. He didn't do it on Saturday. All right. Emmett's 40 years old. Goes, what's next for him?
I don't. For one, I think maybe a little bit of rest. You're right. He is getting up there in age, and you never know. Right time, right place. Maybe there's an opportunity for him to get another bigger fight, right? I mean, a guy in his division took a fight on 4 hours notice. Anything's possible, right? But it's an uphill climb, and it's definitely going to be very difficult for him. But I would say just take a little bit of time off, fix a couple things, but he's always fun. He's a good name when you see it come up on a card. He's one of those guys that make you want to buy a ticket, make you want to show up, because he does show up and fight. He's a good fighter. So I would say if he's chasing a title, that ship may have sailed. But if he wants to stick around and make money, I think he can do that, because he's a guy that makes people want to tune in.
Yeah, well, I don't know about the time off, because he had like 14 months in between knocking out Bryce Mitchell, and he said he healed up his body,
out, though.
and he didn't suffer a KO, and he's 40, so I think he's got to get on that horse and tell the UFC, hey man, I done fucked up. Put me.
What I mean by time off is, don't have an opponent that you're training for. Train for yourself. Fix the little flaws that you have. I think he needs that time.
Yeah, he has such a potent weapon, but sometimes I feel like he's just hunting for that one thing. All right. How about you, Danny? What do you think about Josh Emmett? What would you do next for him?
By the way, I love Josh Emmett. I feel like he's becoming a very underrated, and I think people will find out soon. Once he retires, people are going to be like, "Damn, he was good," and really start appreciating him, because I feel like people don't appreciate him enough. And we're watching right now those highlights against Kelvin Cater, and it was that fight, which was a banger, but he won, and a lot of people thought he lost. And I feel like he got a lot of enemies after that. A lot of people didn't want to see him get a title shot. He was clearly the most deserving guy, and just the fan base wasn't behind him. And I feel like that's kind of stuck around a bit. But really, like, what's there to hate about Josh Emmett? The dude shows up, goes to knock people out, tons of power, exciting. He's one of my favorite fighters at 145. And I think at 40, he's looking great. I don't think he's ever going to fight for a title again. I think that ship has sailed, but like, I think he's still a very valuable figure in the division. You can make fun ass fights with this guy. So I don't know, put him up against maybe if Pitbull loses, maybe him. I don't know. There's so many good fights for him at 145. Yusuf Salal, that'd be a lot of fun as well. I don't know, man. I think this guy, you put him in some fun fights, he can be in some pay-per-views and some fights that people are really looking forward to.
I don't know if Yair would give him the rematch, but yeah,
Yeah.
if Pitbull wins or loses, it probably works for Emmett. And maybe what works for Murphy is Yair Rodriguez coming off a win.
What if
I'm
John
coming off a
Silva
win.
wins against Bryce Mitchell?
That's another animal, man. Holy
John Silva
cow.
versus Josh Emmett. Sign me up, man.
Yeah. Dan, you know all these stats, man. You've forgotten more than most of us know. But what is, I guess, the prospects for a 40-year-old who has given us some great highlights, who does go out there hunting, right, to knock people the F out? You think Emmett has a few more fights left where he can make a last-minute run or, extend his career a little bit?
I think 40 is a tough number at the lighter weight classes, obviously. That being said, I do believe Josh Emmett when he said that like he wasn't fighting healthy. And this was the first fight in a while that he was going to be healthy. So I was actually very much looking forward to that. That being said, I did see some things, and I agree with Danny, by the way. I don't think he gets enough love. But I did see some things that kind of worried me. When he did get Lerone Murphy up against the fence, he kind of paused a couple times there. I don't want to make too much of that. And then, it could have been more of a poor fight IQ thing where he went for takedowns when he shouldn't have, as opposed to, the freezing being a sign of, they say when a fighter starts to get shot is when they stop throwing as much or stop throwing back as much, right? We saw that Renan Barao was very much like that, right? He kind of had that 1,000-mile stare, stop throwing as much. Those are the things you really watch out for in the lighter weight classes as the fighter, gets older for that output to drop. But here's what I think. The Zalal fight, I think, actually makes the most sense. But here's what worries me is that Zalal is another guy who will even less technical and less entertaining, in my opinion. Not by much, but less technical and entertaining than Murphy. He'll do the same thing. That'll be a loser. That'll be an L for Emmett. That'll be an L for us watching. That'll be an L for everybody. So I say you go Arnold Allen and Josh Emmett in a striking battle, and then go classic UFC style where you hope the boring guys kill each other. Not that they're boring, but you put Lerone Murphy and Masvidal Evloev together, assuming Evloev can get past Pico, and you make that a number one contenders fight, which of course the UFC can always audible as they do, and have a good reason to audible in case, a guy named Ilia Topuria wants to come back down and challenge whoever comes out with the vacant title this weekend.
This guy should be a matchmaker, man.
I know.
Hey,
Oh,
you know what Josh Emmett is for me, guys? When there's a card that you feel like is lacking a little bit, and you go, it just needs a little bit more, a little something. That's what I mean is Josh Emmett. That's what it needs. A guy like Josh Emmett. Back in the day, that used to be your Jim Millers and Joe Lozons of the day. I think you just need to plug him into one of those spots. He's always entertaining. He's always going to keep the fans entertained. He's a very valuable asset to have on your staff.
he's violent. That's what I like about him.
You know what fight I love, but I don't think it's going to happen now because he's at 155. At one point, Emmett was calling out Max Holloway. I thought that was a brilliant fight.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. How about Pat Sabatini? He won in the co-main event, pretty much dominated. I know I saw a 30-26 in there. There might have been two, but did his win matter on such a low-profile card? Goes?
I mean, look, it matters for him. He trained his ass off. He dominated. It was a good performance. The fighting style is probably not the UFC's favorite, but I mean, it sucks to kind of be in that position on a card like this. You don't really gain as much, I think, as in other cards, but I think it matters for him.
What I liked about it was he did give him a thumping. I know that it's not a fan-friendly style, but you can tell at the end of the fight when someone at least did give someone else a thumping. Danny, what do you think, man? What should we be excited about Pat Sabatini and he turned things around, maybe, because he does look like he can be a freight train, man.
I mean, the guy is extremely skilled. I thought Brito was going to knock him out, to be honest. I think the world of Brito, and I was surprised that he was able to dominate him because Brito's strong as hell for the division, and he's got good grappling, yet Sabatini was able to control him on the ground and really, just have a ton of control. So certainly a solid win. But again, it's very similar to what we saw in the main event. Like, is the fan base excited to see them fight? Is the fan base down to like pay a pay-per-view to watch them fight? I think the answer for now is no. I think that could change with time, obviously. And obviously, at some point, you keep winning. We've seen it with current champions. You're eventually going to get your due, even if you're not that exciting. So it's just the path is longer. But yeah, I mean, he's a solid fighter, but I don't know how excited the promotion is to have sort of his services at the top.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about a flying Hawaiian, man. Brad Tavares in the record books. He defeated Gerald Meerschaert, ties Michael Bisping with most middleweight wins. Let's go to a fellow Hawaiian. Man, I think I'm trying. Sorry, Brian. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, it was great to see. This was, a lot of people were, giving this matchup some crap, and you maybe expect me to, right, with all the strays that I send to middleweights or anybody above the middleweight division, which is not toward the fighters, by the way. It's toward the matchmakers for kind of force feeding us middleweights in the apex like they're going out of style. That being said, this matchup made sense. You had the finish leader in GM3, big fan of Gerald Meerschaert. Of course, I've got some bias and love for my fellow Hawaiian Extreme Couture Brad Tavares, who is the most winning now middleweight. I just wanted to give love for Brad Tavares. He doesn't get enough love, man. I know he goes to decision all the time and this and that. But guys, all the complaints we have with the UFC, oh, it's a revolving door, how we got these contender series guys coming in, how they don't got respect for the vets they're keeping around, right? It's been a crazy ride and revolving door with criticisms. But Brad freaking Tavares has been here for 15 years, folks, straight, not on his second stint or third stint, which is commendable as well, by the way. But this guy's been able to stay here, and I think that deserves respect. And just real quick, while we have Bisping on the B-roll, it was really interesting. Brad Tavares' last finish was his last dedicated southpaw before this, Krzysztof Jotko in 2018. And at that time, Tavares had a win streak, and he actually called out Michael Bisping, which was a fight that actually made sense. And it really was bothered me that, Bisping never gave Brad his shot. Brad's given so many guys their shots, and he gets no love in return. And it's just really, it was kind of ironic to see Bisping interviewing him and giving him his daps. It's like, Bisping, man, I love Bisping, don't get me wrong, but let's be honest. Bisping got away with a couple, by escaping Yoel Romero after ripping up the flag, by escaping a booked fight with Robert Whittaker that I had at Dog Money. Robert Whittaker, baby. UFC was at 193, the Rousey home fight, right? And then he avoided even the Brad Tavares as of the division. So I just want to give a shout to Brad, man. He gave everybody a shot despite never getting his from the fellow fighters, from the promotion, or the fans. But you know what? He's still here and he's still winning. So F you to the Tavares haters. Go, Brad.
He's the captain at Extreme Couture. That's why they were referred to him as the captain. And he also took a round from DDP. It was 1-1 going into round 3. And DDP that's when the nose was giving him problems. He was huffing and puffing. I think, to be fair, he also did a number on Brad's mouth or his nose or something like that. It was a good fight, but man, he can always look back and go, see that champ right there? I took a round from him, man. I pushed him hard. All right, too much Extreme Couture love from us. We love those guys, but give me another highlight from UFC on ESPN 65, Danny.
I'll go with the Witch Barbosa, first round submission win. I know she lost against Brenda Maverick, but man, she looked good. Her striking solid. Her grappling is very high level. She hits hard. She's very physical for the division as well. And it's a division that, it has a lot of names. And in my opinion, right now, probably the best division in women's MMA. So, solid win. And don't be surprised if in a year and a half, she's ranked and she's up there with the very best.
Goes. How about you?
Ode Osborne threw an absolute bomb, man. The noise that made when it made contact, that strike was pretty amazing. And it's a guy who had his back up against the wall. I know he got it done with his striking, but I hope he does keep working that ground game. It's a great way to bounce back for his career. I know he's very well liked here in Las Vegas. I know he does a lot of work with the community. So good to see that he's probably going to be sticking around for a while.
Yep, left hand got it done. Left hand. All right, what did you think, Dan? Who else you want to give some praise to from that card?
Ode Osborne was a great shout there, to be honest. He is a Vegas local, and I got to interview him before this fight, and that was definitely a great shout there. I want to just shout out the Korean Machine real quick. I know that's a big, Marab's big footsteps to follow him. But I love this guy's, moxie, if you will. And he's going to be, a dependable guy for action fights in the future, I think. Chang Ho Lee.
How about his pivot too? Mid interview, he goes from being the Khabib comparisons, and he goes, "Nah, I'm gonna ride the machine wave." I thought that was hilarious. Hopefully, Khabib didn't take that as any disrespect, but yeah, that guy's a monster. And I just want to say, Sabatini, shout out to you, because even though, again, people don't really like people grinding the victories, I liked your improvement in positions, your ability to retain important positions, and then when it was time to get vicious, you did it, and you got the win. So good for you. Oftentimes, we're always praising the strikers more than the grapplers, but this guy, I think, has something that he can build on there. All right. So listen, folks, these guys are going to get pissed at me because I'm way behind. So help me overcome that by hitting the like button. Maybe I'll get on their good side. That will really, really help the algorithm and help the show grow, not just today, but going forward. All right, guys. PFL. It's called PFL World Tournament 1. The results are in, right? Because it took place last Thursday, and this week they're going to go on Friday. It was welterweights and featherweights mixing it up down in Orlando, Florida. What did you grade it, Danny, from 1 to 10? What did you think after seeing their first offering of the year from PFL?
I thought it was good and it surpassed my expectations. I more or less had it maybe like around a 7, where like my expectations going into the card, but I would say they got a solid 8 out of 10. I think overall it was a really good night for the PFL, and if they can build on this, we'll see what happens this week as well, because they have an event this Thursday. But dude, it was solid. There were some good, entertaining fights there. There were some good finishes as well. Some boring fights as well, but some good prospects coming out of there, and I'm sure we'll get into them into the topics in a sec. But solid night for the PFL. I thought the broadcast looked better. They had a faster pace, which is a big critique. And something I want to shout out is that Thursday time slot. Man, it's been a while since we've seen midweek fights. And I remember like watching fight nights and watching Nick Diaz fight on a random Wednesday against Josh Neer. So yeah, like I really enjoyed this midweek events. Like it doesn't take up the weekend. It just feels different. A lot of other sports, in fact, all other sports operate as well during the week. So yeah, why not getting some fights on a Thursday night? I'm about it. So all in all, great night by the PFL. I would say solid 8 out of 10.
All right, and Ghost, how about you? How would you grade it? Give me a good and a bad too.
I think it's right there with what Danny said. I think 8 is a perfect number. I thought the fights were really good. You could tell that they're paying attention to what people are saying, because the pacing did improve. The commentary team, I think they've been together long enough now where they're starting to mold together very well. They were pretty solid. And look, I know the PFL gets a lot of criticism, right? It's more so the way they handle stuff, but you have to give them their flowers when they come through, and I think they deserved it on this card. I thought the overall product of it jumped up a level, and if they can maintain that over a few weeks, I have no problems, man. I would tune in to see this every week.
How about you, Dan Tom? You're muted. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I like the weeknight MMA as well. Although I will say, I was like, oh, I'm actually going to bring my podcast back just for like a one-off this week. And I always go Thursday nights. I'm like, oh, PFL Thursday nights. That's right. I don't want to compete with them because they definitely put on the action, and I definitely will give them a shout out to one of my favorite podcasts, Pod Yourself a Gun. I'll give them the old B plus, which I would probably roughly average out to an 8 out of 10 there. And again, I think the pacing and the format was a big key. There wasn't some random inauguration into the reserve class flutists of the Navy branch, whatever, where we have some like teenage boys swearing to we don't have like the pause for like the real Hitler youth feeling segments, to be honest, they've had in the past. Not disrespecting our country, I'm just saying the presentation was kind of a bit off. Like, what are we doing here, folks? I didn't see too much of that random stuff. Shouts PFL for keeping it a bit tighter this time around.
You got a good and a bad, Dan, or was that kind of it? I mean, I know I think you are a fan of Thad Gene and what he did, right?
Yeah. I mean, you got newcomers like Thad John and whatnot, and yeah, I think those are the things worth focusing on, is those newer talents with the older ones. And I also think that PFL is going to be making better decisions. My only suggestion would be, and this goes to everybody from Dana White on, right? This isn't just like, oh, we're being hard on the other organization. Like, I feel like all these presidents could maybe step back a little bit from the public. They get to a point where they almost do a little bit more damage than good, whether it's the experienced guys like Dana White or the not as experienced guys like Don Davis. You need someone in the back that kind of knows what's going on and this and that. And if you like PFL, I suggest giving Ian Parker a follow. He does a lot of the
Yeah.
gambling segments and analysis there, but the guy's
Good
really
call.
sharp. Yeah, he makes some really good. If you really want to be kind of up to date with what PFL is going for, I think you should give him a follow, and hopefully PFL gives him more of a following, so to speak, or a saying, because he was saying some really good stuff this last week during the broadcast.
Mm-hmm. Sean O'Connell did some media, Danny. He says we might be a little too harsh on PFL. Was that fair?
I kind of understand where he's coming from. I think his quote was like, people almost root for us to fail, like, and that always happens when there's a competitor to the UFC. And I think there is something to that. There's the hardcore UFC fan that just thinks the UFC is everything and that everything else sucks, everything outside of it. Which, in a sense, there's some sort of truth to that, in the sense that the UFC is the premier organization. But no, you can get a lot of quality MMA outside of the UFC. But I think there's something to it. But all in all, like, prior to this event, there's been a lot of bad press around the PFL, and I think it's been rightfully so. A lot of criticism. I think PFL have really played their cards the wrong way. I'm hoping that this event, which again I thought it was a very solid night for them, is sort of a turnaround point for them, because I do want to wish them well, and I do hope that they find success. The more the merrier in MMA, as far as like promotions and such, not only for us but for the fighters, for the fans, for everyone. So no, I don't agree fully with Sean O'Connell. I do think a lot of the criticism has been fair.
Yeah, and some of it stems from Don Davis. I just think he approaches things wrong. Goes?
I mean, I think the thing is here, like, okay, the three of us, we gave roughly an A, 8, B plus, but we said a lot of good things. So maybe people were wondering, well, why didn't you say 9 or 10? And I think the criticism that Sean's talking about, I think is too much of a blanket statement. I think what you have to look at is, like, maybe the reason we didn't give a 9 or 10 is because there are some beasts that are hanging in the wing that we don't get to see. Your Patchy Mixes, Johnny Eblins, Aaron Picos, those guys. That's what we want to see, and we don't get to see that. Maybe that's why we don't do a 9 or 10. I think the criticism comes for things that they just kind of mishandled. But at the end of the day, we all like PFL. We want to see them succeed. It's good for the fighters. It's good for MMA to have another organization, a place where other fighters can go. We want them to succeed. It's just more the way they've handled certain things. That's where the criticism comes.
Yeah, and more Dan Hardy, please.
He's great, isn't he?
I'm a big fan
Yeah,
of his.
but with like with some tea and some cough syrup or something. That guy's voice was a mess on Thursday. How the hell you got him doing post fight interviews, like in cage interviews? Get Randy Couture or Sean, like, they've been on broadcast long enough to be able to handle that. That was one bad from the broadcast. Love Dan Hardy. I think he's great. His analysis is great, but his voice was completely shot. And it was painful to hear. I could
I
feel
know.
the pain, that he was undergoing. So, yeah, come on. I mean, we saw Joel Martinez. Was it Joel Martinez not that long ago that had an issue? And then was it Laura Senko that had to step in and do some announcements or something? I forget. But, like, yeah, if you're not right, man, don't be in there on the mic.
His voice was bad. In fact, I got a text from Chidi and Jukwani. He was like, "What's up with this guy's voice?" So something's happening there. All right, goes. Answer me this: is the PFL better off without a season? And like you said, start bringing in Patchy Mix. Is he your champ, or does he face last year's champ? Do we create the belt? Because remember, bantamweight, middleweight, they're launching that, or relaunching middleweight, launching bantamweight. Like, what do you think, since you've got a little bit of this world tournament feel now, 1 week, this week they go on Friday? What are your thoughts?
Oh, Friday, yeah.
I think now they are better off with it, right? Like, I feel like it's I didn't hate the season. I actually enjoyed it, but I feel like it served its purpose. We've kind of been through it. Now let's let some of these storylines breathe a little bit, get a change. I think it's time to shake things up a little bit. That's what MMA fans like. So I don't regret it, but I think it's the perfect time to do something different, and I think it's going to pay off this season for the PFL. That's what they have to do, is they have to find a way to keep our interest.
Goes, I'm staying with you. Give me a highlight from PFL World Tournament 1.
Okay, so another praise that I think the PFL did good this week was setting things up, letting us know why we have to keep tuning in. And when Pinedo and Braga came into the cage and they had that stare down, they were so intense looking at each other. Although only one guy was doing all the talking, I don't know what exactly was going on there, but it got me pumped up, man, and it made me put it in my head. I have to come back and see these guys fight again. You know, if you don't know the history of these guys, they did a good job of making you feel like you have to watch the product, and I really like that.
I missed that. Who was doing the talking?
It was Braga. Braga was just talking nonstop, and Pereira was just
Well, it
staring
makes
him
sense
down.
because the other guy's El Mudo, right?
Yeah,
Danny, but you're a fan of
the.
the Mudo. What'd you think of his performance?
I thought it was solid, man. Jesus Pino's a guy that I've been like telling people about for quite a while. I had him winning the first season. I'm like, watch out with this guy. This guy's the dark horse, and he did in his first season. And I think the PFL has a great name there with Jesus Pineo. Man, he's so good. Like we're talking about guys like Lerone Murphy and Pat Sabatini. Like that guy doesn't talk at all. That guy doesn't speak English, and his nickname is El Mulo. Interviews with him are a little tough because he's not as comfortable on camera, this and that. You guys know, you guys have talked to him, but great dude. But like when he gets in there, man, he hits a switch and he's just nasty. That trilogy against Braga, I'm super excited to see it. And that's what the PFL needs. Like all of a sudden, like you don't need an old name or you have former UFC this, former UFC that. We're excited about native product that you built. So yeah, super excited for that trilogy, and shouts out to Pinelo because also a year plus without competing. Last time he competed, I think, was November of 2023, was out for the entirety of 2024 due to some back issues. And now he comes back and looks great, man. I would love to see him win another season. And I think he might be the guy. He might be your favorite to win the whole thing.
Yeah, my heart broke for Jeremy Kennedy.
Yeah.
And seeing him kind of like, come on, let me get that last judge's scorecard. Shout out to him. You could tell he worked on his wrestling defense, his ability to get up. I really enjoyed that fight, the classic grappler versus striker, and it became a race of whose number 2 skill would shine. Would Movlid Kabulaev striking, work if he got shut down by Kennedy, and he did, or would Kennedy's, grappling work if his striking got shut down? But that's obviously not a road he wanted to go down. But it was really, really a fun fight to watch. Dan, I know you already give your thoughts on Thad Jean. We have to move on, but did you want to circle anything out with PFL before we move on? I thought I saw your head nodding. So
I just want to say that I'm looking forward to see what they can do story wise to get us sucked in, because I was a fan of the early stories with like Louis Taylor, put the guns down. That was one of my favorite PFL stories right there. So I'm looking forward to see if they can create some more.
All right, now Dan, I don't want to get you fired up, but we got to move on to the next topic. Guess what we're starting with? A rematch. Merab Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley have been booked for UFC 316 in Newark, New Jersey on June 7th. Is this the right choice? Will we even need an alternate? Early lean, what are your thoughts on this whole thing here?
What? Another rematch? Who could have called this, guys? I mean, the next thing you're going to tell me is that Canada's getting a WMMA title fight and that there's an impromptu main event that got pulled apart together. That's a fun rematch, but everybody's going to overlook the fact that the fighters are fighting on just some few weeks' notice. Oh, who could have called all this? I know I got a lot of crap from in the beginning of the year coming on SBC, guys, and I said the UFC matchmaking has been bad and lazy. We're talking about 2024, and people are like, what? We had UFC 300. We had the spear, dude. We had slap fighting. What are you talking about? Well, guess what, guys? We haven't seen very many fight of the nights and this and that because just the matchmaking has been pretty poor this year. I think we can all agree, an event-wise. So, that doesn't come as a surprise. No, early lean Merab, of course. I don't like the fight, but we got to have rematches. And hey, at least we're talking about lighter weight fights being featured rather than like another middleweight main event that they love shoving down our throats, guys.
All right, Danny, what are your thoughts on the co-main event? Juliana Pena against Kayla Harrison at UFC 316 in Newark, New Jersey. Who has more to lose, too, man? I think this one's compelling in a way.
Man, first of all, finally, that was my reaction when it got announced. Like, holy shit, guys! Like, it just feels like women's bantamweight. We're getting like I feel like the belt has been defended or fought for like once in the last 5 years. Like, that is such a forgotten division. Like, I sometimes forget it even exists, and I'm like, oh, well, they're
Mhm.
booking now a fight for women's bantamweight. It is ridiculous how much that division has changed. Keeping in mind that at one point it was a darling of the UFC with Misha Tate, Ronda Rousey, Holly Holm, and so many names. It was a big, big selling point. And now, again, I sometimes forget that it even exists. And I'm so glad that this fight got booked because I see so much potential in Kayla Harrison. I've covered her very closely through her PFL run. She's got that it factor. She's not afraid to go on camera and talk her smack. She's got a good trash talking game, a little bit of that pro wrestling aspect to it as well. And she's a hell of a fighter, man. She can strike. She's nasty. She's got great ground and pound. She's got submissions. And I have a feeling that this build up with Juliana is going to overshadow the main event because it seems like we're going to get a little bit a more tamed version of Sean O'Malley. Even Marab was like, damn, why don't you talk bad about me or something on social media? I got to get fired up, man. Stop being so nice to me. So don't be
Yeah.
surprised if a lot of the headlines are consumed by that Coleman event. So, yeah, absolutely love it. Finally, the women's bantamweight division is getting going. And to answer your second question, who has more to lose? I got to say Kayla Harrison because we've seen Juliana lose her belt and come back and win. If she were to lose this fight, does her legacy change a whole lot? She already won the belt. Whereas Kayla, I feel like she's been destined, and a lot of people just have her as future UFC champion. So if she doesn't live up to that promise, I do feel like her legacy and the way we view her could change a lot. Whereas Juliana is already more settled. So definitely Kayla Harris.
And they both have ties to Amanda Nunes. So
Mhm.
we'll see if one of them can pull them in. And by the way,
That's
don't
going to
feel
get
bad.
exciting.
Don't feel bad about forgetting things that have to do with women's MMA. ESPN MMA forgot Gina Carano existed when they put out some list earlier last week as well. So goes. How about Brandon Royval and Manel Kopp? I mean, 4 people logged on and said, whoa, okay, what's going on here? They're going to fight at UFC 317 on June 28th in Las Vegas. But what that also means is it appears that Brandon Moreno made enough of a splash that probably him and Pantoja are going to mix it up in Guadalajara.
Oof. Yeah, you never know, right? I mean, look, this fight, I love that they revisited it. It's a fresh matchup for both guys. But the one thing that kind of, anytime Manel Kopp is involved, you get a little worried about the weight issues at times. And now you got Brandon Royval and what he's going through with the concussions. I don't know that this gets talked about enough. And I love
Yeah.
the fact that he stepped up and talked about it in public. Um, those are things that are very day-to-day things, and even though he may feel like he's ready to go right now, that can very well change, and sometimes it doesn't even have to happen in the training room for you to feel those effects and realize, "I just can't do this." So it's kind of like a scary matchup, and I hope that it does happen because on paper, it's gonna be a really, really fun one, but there are a lot of surrounding issues, and I know Dan has talked about this as well, concussions and how it's affected him. So, I like both fighters. I think the fight on paper will be a lot of fun. I just hope it happens.
A lot of concussion talk this past week with Verdum pulling out of a
Mhm.
fight, but then referencing how he feels like he's had scarring in the brain and future CTE is something that he fears. Volk, he came back from, he's coming back from 2 vicious KOs, took the appropriate time off. And so obviously he's going to, be fighting on Saturday. Goes and I will be doing a watch along, by the way, on Saturday, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And then going back to um, Josh Emmett's walkout. I love his team, Castillo, Rodriguez. But did you guys see Chris Holdsworth kind of
Mhm.
off to the side?
Yeah.
He also, I think, had a similar injury to Dan, a knee in jiu-jitsu. Was that it, Dan? That got you or something like that in training, and it ended his career. Remember, he won the Ultimate Fighter. I think you mentioned Misha Tate and Ronda Rousey. I think it was that season, and he had suffered that, never came back from it. But I'm still glad to see he's part of that team. There's a lot of consistency at Team Alpha Male. But Dan, why don't you talk about that a little bit? Your mic's muted.
I definitely took some knees to the head in jiu-jitsu, but mine came in 2015, I was for my second amateur fight camp, and actually got concussed in sparring. And I'm a guy who's 5'9", and I attributed a lot of that time. I think I'd made myself extra prone because even though I was only, maybe down in the 170s, maybe, going maybe on my way down to 155, 5'9", same height as Brandon Royval, who fights at 125, by the way. But when you're cutting that kind of weight, a lot of things come at a cost. And even just keeping a lower walking weight, if you're not properly hydrated enough, all these things can kind of contributed to it. And which is what I thought kind of happened to me. Everybody's different, of course. And with Brandon Royval, he has already been on my watch list, guys. I mean, just because he is a taller fighter cutting down, whether we're talking about Corey Hill back at 155, snapping his shin, the first shin snap in the UFC, whether we're talking about Montel Jackson's propensity to gas, Sean O'Malley's propensity to get injured. We've seen it with Brandon Royval, both in fight and out of fight. I mean, Manel Cap isn't the only one to worry about. I know he's got the second coming of Ian McCall's luck over here, but Royval's got his history of pullouts and injuries as well. Now you're going to add the concussion to it. Basically, guys, tall fighters who go to the lighter weight classes like Royval with that frame, those are always my canary in a coal mine for both physical injuries, which check box for Royval, check box for a lot of the fighters I just mentioned, as well as brain injuries because you are limiting that fluid. I think that's a bigger factor than age or even miles. It's the weight cutting, guys. And I do not like Royval at 125. I didn't like him at 125. It gets worse when you get older. These canaries in the coal mine, I watch for when they turn 30. That's when these weight cuts really start biting them in the butt. I think Royval's 30, 31. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pick Royval confident in this weight class going forward, guys.
All right. Good stuff there, man. Serious topic in our sport. And I always brace myself as these guys age, retire. How are they going to flow into retirement? We always wish them the best. That's part of the whole, pulling and pushing. Does a fighter, should they continue? And sometimes we're trying to look out for them because they don't look out for themselves. One last matchup that was made, Ian Machado Gary versus Carlos Prates at UFC on ESPN 66. So, guys, what happened was Jamal Hill had to pull out because of a leg injury. It doesn't sound serious, and it sounds like him and Roundtree might just be preserved and moved to a later date. I would like that to happen, and I'm glad it's not a serious injury considering he's coming off an Achilles heel. But nice fill-in with Ian Machado Gary, a second fight where he's coming in on late notice against Carlos Prates, who's seizing the opportunity. He lost the Neal fight, but now he jumps in, and they saved this fight night main event, and this should be a banger. So good job by everyone around, the two fighters taking it on late notice, and the UFC for making things happen. We have to move on, though, because UFC 314 is on Saturday night. I've been calling it a banger. The expectations are high. Is this the best card of the year so far, Danny? What's your excitement level? It's going to be in Miami, where I think I said you're there now. You will be there later tonight. But you got to be pretty pumped up.
Yeah, I'm in Colombia right now, and I'm super excited to get back. Usually I get very nostalgic and very sad to leave my home country, my beautiful country of Colombia, but this time around, I'm like, damn, I got a fight to cover, and it's a damn good one. UFC 314 from top to bottom is stacked, and also it's very personal for me because I've been interviewing Diego Lopes, and a lot of the headlines early on for him, for MMA Junkie, was Alexa Grasso's jiu-jitsu coach. Now he's a UFC title challenger and potential UFC champion. This guy, I've seen him been grinding on the regional scene for years, and I've always seen him, and I always thought, man, this guy's such a good talent. Wait till he gets to the UFC. Had a bit of a hiccup there, Contender Series, and maybe we thought that was it for him, but came back, and then the rest of history. What a great card! And outside of that main event, I mean, there's so many good fights here. I love it. I haven't been this. I think this might be the best card the UFC has put together, at least in 2025. And the best card that we have seen, at least also from the rest of the cards that are booked as well. I absolutely adore this card. It's great.
All right. And share your excitement level and then start talking about Volk versus Lopes for the vacant belt. Remember, Topuria is moving up to lightweight. So this is for the proper undisputed featherweight title, Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. And may I say something real quick, Goes, before you get started? Lopes did an interview, might have been with Danny, where he already said, and I'd love to fight the winner in Guadalajara. I love that vision, man. I love that vision. I've become such a big fan of Diego Lopes.
Yeah, I mean, you saw what happened in the last card in Mexico, right? Like, who doesn't want to fight in front of a crowd like that? This card, though, this is why people tune in. This is why we love the sport. It's so stacked, and I think that's why some of the other cards we don't have the energy. It's a little bit more criticized because they're not all made the same. But this is the one. These are the type of cards that we all love, and the fight itself. Look, it's a little bittersweet, right? Like the UFC has been kind of losing some stars, right? And are they replenishing them at the rate that they need to? Maybe not, but you have one like Lopez that I believe can transcend. He can become a bigger star. Volkanovski, you don't want to lose a guy like that. He's so good, man, and he's good in the cage, and he's good on the mic, even on camera. And it's a little bittersweet for me. The only problem I have is if Volkanovski were to win this fight and regain the title, I feel like maybe he'll be judged a little unfairly because we're all going to feel like you're only champ because Ilya's not there, and I don't know how he's going to deal with that.
True.
So part of me kind of wants to see Lopez win this fight because you might not have that type of argument. He's kind of the new crop in this division, but on paper, dude, I know I've said this before, but back when we would watch cartoons and all you would see is a cloud and a bunch of feet and fists flying everywhere, that's what I picture this fight being. I think it's going to be a great one.
Yeah, Lopez, man, he's like a track star. He just comes out of the gate and goes for it. Sky Visa and El Daddy in our chat room was very pumped up for UFC 314. It sounds like Anshul Jubilee's gas station might even be going. He's asking for information on ceremonial weigh-ins and how early he should get there. Luckily, some of the people in the chat room have responded. I advise just look, man, if you're planning a whole trip on going down there, get there an hour early. Get there when the door opens. Pick out your seat at the weigh-ins. It should be a good time. I hope you have a good time. Thank you, Cesar Sanchez, Scott Christian, for chiming in. Dan Tom, let me ask you something here from another angle. What benefits most for the what sorry, how does the UFC benefit the most with Volkanovski and Lopez? You got a guy that is being labeled probably the greatest featherweight champion ever. Some even say he might be the greatest featherweight ever, but that's a whole other argument. And then Diego Lopez, rising star, young, good-looking dude, exciting, a finisher. What do you think the UFC is kind of thinking here?
I mean, I think they're just thinking, hey, let's get our contractual obligations together and fill the schedule. I think that's what everything comes down to be honest. But yeah, I mean, there's no way they can't be excited about this. I think it's a win-win situation. It's a great fight from a hardcore to a casual perspective. Volkanovski, you're right. There could be a little bit of, oh, he's only champ because of this. But what that does give is it gives a narrative and a storyline, even more for Ilya to come back, right? Which of course the UFC would not be opposed to. And with Lopez, I mean, we've been singing his praises. I mean, how can you not be happy with a guy like that? He is all action, all entertainment. What is he, trilingual? I mean, how much of a demographics does this guy cover? I mean, how can you not be excited if he ends up as your champion there? I know there's Evloev in the wings, and he's got an unfair road and path. But again, that still makes a good story, so it's a win-win.
Danny and Dan will both be doing pre-fight write-ups or shows, so check them out at Blemos MMA and check out Dan Substack. Is it called Fluid Thoughts, or how should people
He's Dan
sign
Tom
up for that?
MMA. Find me anywhere Dan Tom MMA. Just simple as that.
And
Everywhere.
us as a staff, we put out our predictions every week. Shout out to Cold Coffee. I think he's won it like 10 times. But the staff puts out picks, so you can see our predictions there. And I think those are released on Friday. Normally I would ask the guys, but we have to move on because this is a deep, deep card. Let's talk about Chandler and Pimblett. What's at stake here, Danny Segura?
Man, I think for Chandler, I think it's different for both guys. I think for Pimblett is obviously title contention, and dare I say title shot? I mean, God, if Islam Makhachev is looking for a fresh face, a big fight, and perhaps quote unquote an easy payday, I mean, that kind of seems like the guy, right? I don't know. And then undefeated in the UFC, win over Michael Chandler, especially if he gets a finish. Knowing how the UFC works, again, I don't know if I would make that decision, but I certainly wouldn't rule it out that the UFC would make, especially since Makhachev is not booked. So yeah, we'll see here. We'll see.
Over Gaethje, Topuria, and Oliveira.
I mean, prior to the Rafael Fiziev fight, Gaethje was knocked out. Oliveira, prior to the win against Chandler, he had lost to Arman Sarukian. Sarukian's not getting a shot because, he pulled out and the UFC didn't like that. And then Topuria, I mean, that to me seems like the obvious one to make, but it seems like Makhachev's not too sold on them. I don't know. We'll see. But don't be surprised if it ends up being Paddy Pimblett. The UFC is clearly has been grooming him to kind of be a star and a top guy in that division, and we see a big opportunity here for him to do so and make himself legit. I think that's what it is, GG. I think for Paddy Pimblett is legitimizing himself among the MMA fan base because we know he's a star, we know he's good, Cage Warriors champion, but is he great? Is he a top 5 fighter? Is he one of the elite at 155? And I think in order to get past Chandler, you got to be that. If you're mediocre or middle of the pack, I do believe Chandler's going to run through you. So yeah, I think if Paddy Pimblett wins, we can't talk much shit about him. He's legit. He's a top contender. And for Chandler, it's staying alive, man. I don't know how you come back from a Paddy Pimblett defeat. I mean, as a contender, because we've seen him as a face in the division, as a top guy. But if you lose to Pimblett, I think all that's gone, man. I think all that's gone, and your chances for a UFC belt or something big in that manner disappears. So, big fight at 155. Strange
And
one.
they're
But big one.
going 5 rounds. I like Danny's optimism goes, but how about in your eyes? What do you see here between these two? What's at stake?
Danny, we had 6 minutes left in the show, and that hashtag was
Stop it.
empty. It
Stop
was
it.
empty. But you tripping. Look, man, I kind of get where you're going, and I think eventually we will get there. But I do like a lot of things that Danny said. Look, Paddy Pimblett has tried to convince us that he deserves to be here for a long time. But what he needs to do is convince us that he's elite. And to do that, you got to go through a Michael Chandler. The question is, what Michael Chandler are we going to get? Is it the guy that wants to go out there and entertain, or is it the guy that wants to win a title, a guy that's going to go out there and give us every facet of his game? When he does that, he's very hard to beat. That's what makes this fight so interesting. So I can't wait to see this one. I think on paper, if you look at it, it's hard to pick against Michael Chandler. But he has to go out there and be that Michael Chandler that really uses every facet of his game. Because if you're going to go out there just to put on a show, that's what Paddy Pimblett wants, and he will exploit that. But I do love that it's high up in the card, and I think it deserves a lot of publicity. I think both guys have put a lot in for the UFC, and I can't wait to see it get going.
Dan, thoughts on the co-main event? And does it have some Tavares and Mearshart vibes where if Pimblett can't get this fight to the ground, man, he might, be getting hit hard for 25 minutes.
Paddy's definitely made some improvements, and I want to give him his credit there. But it is going to be interesting. By the way, Paddy Pimblett and Diego Lopes, would you have ever guessed that those two guys made 135? By the way, Diego Lopes actually fought at catchweight 132. Think about that.
Jeez.
132. This guy's huge, man. I've seen him in person anyways. Paddy's huge too. Paddy might look like a whole weight class over Michael Chandler, even though there's like 2 inches on paper of the difference. So be prepared for that, folks. I'm just trying to prepare myself and, for what that walkout's going to be. I'm curious what Danny's going to think of that, because you got Paddy Pimblett, which is like, guys, no judgment. I've just never been to a gay club, right? But if I did, I imagine it would be like a Paddy Pimblett walkout, right? You hear the music, you stop. You feel the energy, you start dancing, right? Like that, like a Goodwill Hunting Matt Damon there. But seriously, you mix that in with whatever cocaine is flowing through the crowd of Florida, whatever wildness they got. I mean, it's going to be a party on the way out to the on the way to this fight.
Yeah, walkout's going to be wild.
Lopez made 132. I think Pimblett, I saw him at a Padres game. He was 232. But no, man, listen, when he's in camp and shredded, I mean, he really, really has the abs and everything. I can't wait to see this fight. It should be a good one. The UFC went 5 rounds with this one, this co-main event. Let's hustle through these last couple. Bryce Mitchell versus John Silva. Real quick, Danny, your thoughts about this one?
That's a weird one. I'm still kind of weirded out about Mitchell's comments. And I don't know where his psyche is at. I've seen some weird headlines and like some obscure Twitter accounts. I don't know what to believe, but it just seems he's sort of at a weird place. And John Silva is not a guy that, when there's controversy, he'll kind of stay away from that and keep professional, I guess. But he's going to poke at that. So it's going to be a very, very weird fight. I wonder how the crowd is going to embrace Bryce Mitchell. I don't know. This one's a weird one, but back to sort of the sporting side of things, huge opportunity for Jan Silva, who's clearly an entertainer, who's clearly a very skilled fighter, but beating Bryce Mitchell is a whole different animal. So if you were to get a win there, man, now we're talking about top 10 fights for him. And man, that featherweight division is just full of killers. Like I feel a little bit bad for Volkanovski and Diego Lopes. Obviously, whoever wins the belt is gonna have tons of success, this and that. So it's hard to feel bad for a guy like that. But still, what's coming for them? Like we're talking about the Evloevs, the Lerone Murphys. I mean, there's so many names. John Silva, Kevin Vallejos is on his way up. You remember that name? There's so many guys that are coming up that it's like, damn, they're gonna have some tough ass fight in their hands in the next few years.
Goes possibly the greatest Bellator fighter ever is fighting on this card. He's debuting in the UFC. Pitbull, Patricio Freire. He fights Yair Rodriguez. What are you looking for here in this fight?
I hope Danny brings an oxygen tank because the emotions on this card, the fights are just tremendous. Dude, this fight right here, man, it can be an absolute banger. I mean, when does Yair Rodriguez come out and not give you everything? When does Pitbull come out and not give you an honest performance? He's going to have to figure out that range. I think early on in the fight, give it a minute and a half. I think we're going to know in which direction this fight's going to go. But I think it's going to end with a pretty nasty KO, whether it's, Pitbull or whether it's Yair. But I think the judges can kind of go get a hot dog for this one.
All right. And just to finish out here, Dan, Tom, give me a highlight. What should people look forward to on this card other than these 4 matchups we've talked about? They lost Pratis and Neal. Remember, Pratis is headed to KC to fight Ian Machado Gary. So Krylov and Reyes have been promoted. What do you want to shed a light on, Dan, Tom?
Well, I feel like the 3 main matchups we talked about were short, stout, proven products versus giant, opportunist, dangerous guys. That is the whole card. So I'm going to point to another matchup like that, which is Dan Ige and Sean Woodson. Obviously, Dan Ige got plenty of love from me and the community, right? But how about Sean Woodson? I want to say, my under the radar fighter for Junkie, he got pulled from his fight from Edson Barbosa. That was Steve Garcia. However, my honorable mentions that I put on that have been killing it. I had Eamon Zahabi on there. I had Jazz Davicius on there. And Sean Woodson was another guy I had on there for runners up for under the radar guys with streaks, man. So it's a low key important fight. I know it's on the prelims, but this is a stack card. Woodson versus Ige.
Back to you, Goes. Highlight.
I think it's been an honor covering Jim Miller's career over all this time. And anytime you get to see him perform at a high level, soak it in. You never know when the last one's going to be. And Chase Hooper's a game opponent. The age gap there is pretty massive. It's going to be interesting. I hope it hits the ground, though.
All right, Danny. Danny, how about you?
I'm going to go with Dom Reyes. I'm going to link things back to our year-end awards, just like Dan Tom did. I know Francis Ngannou won the last one for 2024, and honorable mention was Yusuf Salal. That's what Nolan King had, which, by the way, great picks. But a guy also that doesn't get talked about enough about a comeback is Dom Reyes. I mean, let's not forget, in that end of a losing streak, he looked like shit. Let's be honest. He looked like a fighter that was completely done with the sport. I mean, he got rocked off a jab fighting, Ryan Spann? And then got knocked out. I mean, and then the blood clot, he had a bunch of health issues. Now he comes back, 2-fight winning streak, has looked great, and he's getting Nikita Krivlov, who's a very solid guy. So, man, this guy to me is a huge example of just resilience and just continuing to kind of go at it. And I want to see what he could do, because he could maybe be a title contender if he gets a win here. I wouldn't be surprised.
And guys, my highlight is not just John Silva and his fight versus Bryce Mitchell. John Silva, and in a few weeks, Carlos Prates and this Fighting Nerds team. It's reminding me of the old Shoot Box team, the Brazilian top team, where they have an aura and a mystique to them. I don't think these guys have lost in years, especially in the UFC. And I think Kyle Barrios already teasing that he's got a big fight coming up. I'm a big fan of these guys. Keep an eye on that team. It's popping, and like I say, it's just giving me some Shoot Box and BTT vibes from years ago. Hopefully that helps them bring in a core of fighters so that their team continues to grow. And hopefully this show continues to grow by having people like you tune in every Monday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, letting us come into your world for an hour and talk about the latest news and results and previewing what's upcoming for 1 hour, maybe an hour and 5 minutes today. Don't forget, Goz and I will be hosting a watch-along on Saturday, UFC 314 watch-along starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Overreaction Time. Check that out. Noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Tuesdays. And again, shout out to you guys in the chat room. I didn't get to as many this week. But on your way out, if you would still be kindly enough to take one for the team, hit the like button, subscribe. There'll be tons of content. There always is. Junkie is always blowing up and growing, and it's thanks to you. We're out of here. Go out and be a champion.